guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a special video today. I am halfway or a little bit more than halfway through my pregnancy, and I just over the last week or two have been reflecting back upon the 4.5 years that Josh and I tried to conceive this baby. And while pregnancy can just be consumed with thoughts about the impending birth of the baby, it really is also a time, a miraculous time, to think about what happened and how you got here. And so I don't think I really ever did a complete video kind of outlining our personal story and background of our infertility, and I figured that a video might be helpful to some of you who experienced some or all of the diagnoses that we had gotten over those years, and obviously what led us to IVF. Josh and I got married in October of 2005. We were not ready to have kids when we first got married. We really wanted to travel and kind of get our careers going and schooling done and all of those kinds of things. So we did not actively try for a baby for the first 8 months of our marriage. However, in July, early July of 2005, I had a really bad period, and I had had them on and off from the start of when I started to menstruate through this time. But this one was quite different than any other. I was basically like hemorrhaging in the shower. So we had made a doctor's appointment a few weeks later, and basically my OBGYN said that he thought at the time that without doing a laparoscopy that I had endometriosis, and that the best time to get pregnant would have been yesterday. Basically we had said, you know, if it was God's will for us, maybe in another year we would be able to have a baby, but we weren't ready then. But then the next morning, you know, things happened, and we felt like, I think we both kind of had this moment where, again, what if it never happened? Well, how would we feel? And I would have been devastated. And, you know, we were already married. We already had purchased a home. We both had careers, jobs anyway. And so we did one time, and within 11 days DPO, I had a positive pregnancy test. So essentially, I was 23 and pregnant, and I couldn't have really asked for anything different. And then Jackson ended up coming at 37 weeks, 3 weeks early, via C-section because of my preeclampsia. So again, we just, you know, assumed everything was meant to be. It was meant to be, obviously, and we welcomed a beautiful baby boy in March of 2007. First year after he was born, Josh and I had decided to wait a few years at least to have another baby. One was a financial reason, and secondly, again, I just couldn't imagine loving another baby the way I loved him, and I felt like I wanted to be able to have the same kind of time with a new baby that I had with Jackson. So I figured the best time for us would be to wait until like he was 4 and going into kindergarten. And 8, I had an IUD put in. It was the Paragard IUD, which does not secrete a hormone like the Mirena, but it does works the same way. Essentially, it's a copper IUD. So I believe it was around March of 2008 or May, somewhere around there, that I had that put in, and that was good supposed to be good for about 5 years, and we thought that that was a perfect solution for us. Fast forward to end of January 2009, I had periods on the Paragard, but they weren't really consistent. But they were consistent enough to know at this point in time, it was the end of January, that I had not had any kind of bleeding in quite a while. And so I decided to take a pregnancy test, and it was immediately positive. And to be 100% honest, my first reaction was utter despair, and we were just not in a great place financially. It wasn't part of our plan, things like that. And then my despair turned to really fear, wondering how was this baby growing inside of me with an IUD inside of me. We could not get in to see the doctor until the following Monday. Remember, that was on a Friday that I tested. We couldn't get in to see him until Monday. And so really that despair turned into fear, turned into kind of like, okay, like this is our plan. This is God's plan for us. We're going to welcome another baby into this family. However, come Monday, we had gone in and they had done an ultrasound and could not locate the baby's heartbeat. And I think at the time, this obviously has been several years ago, but I believe at the time they had said that the baby was roughly like 6 to 8 weeks along, but had stopped growing. So our doctor could not get the IUD out, and because of that, and because I had basically had a miscarriage, they decided to do a D&C. So 2 days later, we went in and had the D&C. It was, you know, overall very easy. I was just put to sleep, quick little procedure. Definitely not something I would hope anyone would have to endure, but it wasn't all that painful or anything like that. And basically they wanted to remove the pregnancy and remove the IUD, which were both done successfully. After that ordeal, I did not want to go back on the Paragard or any IUD, because obviously my experience was that I was now a part of the 0.03% of women that would get pregnant on an IUD. So having gotten pregnant with Jackson on the first try, having now gotten pregnant on an IUD, I just thought we were extremely fertile, to say the least. So needless to say, we decided then for me to go back on the pill, which I had taken actually throughout my teenage years and early 20s, just to help with my periods. So we decided to go back on the pill. I do also want to interject in here another part of this whole story, and that is Hashimoto's thyroid disease. So after I had Jackson in 2007, about 3 months after I had him, I had a sore throat. And so I went to kind of like a little walk-in clinic, thinking that I might have strep throat and wanted to get tested. And I think it was seasonal allergies at the time. However, the doctor at the clinic, you know, usually they're feeling your glands and things like that to see if they're swollen, noticed that I had what is called a goiter on my thyroid, or my thyroid was rather enlarged. She had asked me if I had ever had it tested, and at the time I don't think that I did. So she referred me to an endocrinologist locally to where we were at the time. So I did make an appointment with them, had a battery of tests run, both blood, they do some eye tests and things like that. And within probably about 2 months, they had diagnosed me with Hashimoto's thyroid disease, which is also kind of a term used for hypothyroidism. I wasn't diagnosed right away simply because I was still postpartum. They wanted to make sure it wasn't just my hormones still needing to level out. But it was around 6 to 7 months postpartum that they decided to put me on Synthroid, which is used to treat hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's. I kind of suspect that I had this prior to the birth of my son, but I think pregnancy exacerbated that for me. Went back on birth control after the D&C miscarriage. That was in 2009, and for the next 2.5 years, we did not try for a baby at all. We were not ready. We were going to stick to our plan of Jackson being 4 and going into kindergarten. So it was around August of 2011 that we had moved across the country. we had gotten settled, and I sort of felt like, okay, things seem to be really great. I think we should start now. Off the pill in probably July, the month before, and started to try on our own. We really, in the first few months, didn't track anything. Again, with our track record of conceiving, we didn't think that we'd have an issue getting pregnant. But 1 month turned into 2 months, turned into 6 months, and I started to wonder sort of what was going on. So we had gone to a new OBGYN where we were living, and at the time, I think I was sort of early in my cycle, and she said, I think you should come in on day 21 and we'll just do a test to make sure you've ovulated. So I go in on day 21, a few weeks later, and come to find out, at least for that cycle, I had not ovulated. And she felt like that was our issue in not conceiving, which obviously very well could have been at that time. I don't know. So she decided to put us on a low dose of Clomid to see if that would help with ovulation and conception. So we did 1 month of Clomid. I did get a positive reaction to it, ovulated, but we did not conceive. The second month, I was on the same dose of 25 or 50, I can't remember, it's been 5 years ago. Did not ovulate, so clearly did not respond well to the same dose. So they bumped it up, doubled it or something like that. Did not respond for the third month in a row, did not ovulate. So clearly, Clomid worked for me once in terms of ovulation, but did not work for me the second and third months. OBGYN felt like I should be maybe seeing a fertility specialist. So we switched over to fertility specialist, had a battery of tests done, blood work. This is the first time my husband kind of came into the picture, having done a semen analysis. My blood work, based on that fertility doctor, had indicated that I might have signs or indicators of PCOS. And then on my husband's side, the semen analysis, although I don't remember the figures, had come back kind of within normal range, so they said. So I was put on Metformin, which is a drug used to, it's actually a diabetic type drug, used to help with diabetes. And I think with my Hashimoto's, they kind of felt like maybe the endocrine system would benefit well from the metformin, but also the PCOS would benefit well from metformin. I did that for about 2 months, but we saw no change in anything, no change in cycle, no change in ovulation, nothing. So he decided that we should try Femara, which is another drug used similarly to Clomid to induce ovulation. It's actually a drug used for breast cancer patients, but has been shown well to have women ovulate. Once we did Femara, worked beautifully. I ovulated both times, still no pregnancy. During the third cycle of third cycle of Femara, we also did an HSG test. I think that's what it's called. Mark me if I'm wrong. But that's where they shoot the dye into your uterus and ovaries to make sure nothing was blocked. Thankfully, nothing was. I remember him saying it did take some time for the dye to get through the tubes, but it did successfully get to the ovary. And his hope was, by doing that, sort of flushing it out, that by that and taking the Femara the next month or two, that we would have a successful pregnancy. However, we did not. And his next recommendation was for us to try an IUI. So I think it was roughly November of 2012 and December. I think those are the dates that we did 2 back-to-back IUIs. And again, the Femara was successful in terms of ovulation. We did not do any kind of medicated IUI at the time. It was just simply taking the Femara, tracking my ovulation at home, and then once I got a positive LH surge, the next morning we would go in for the IUI. When we were living in the Midwest, I want to say out of pocket, it was around $400 for each IUI. Mind you, this whole time and even up till today, we don't have any fertility coverage on our insurance. Our insurance does cover anything diagnostic, so in terms of like the HSG or semen analysis or any kind of laparoscopy, all of those things are covered. But actual things to help you get pregnant, such as an IUI or IVF, are not covered at all. So unfortunately, both IUIs, again, were unsuccessful, and we were sort of dumbfounded why. And the reason I say that is I felt like at the time, so many things had been thrown at us that could have impacted our fertility. It could have been the DNC that we had, and although the HSG did not show any blockage, you just never know if a DNC could cause any damage. That they really can't see every little, part of your reproductive system with that. It could have been the fact that at this time now had been 5 years of trying to balance my endocrine system with the Hashimoto's thyroid disease. I had done a lot of research over the years, and there is a direct link between Hashimoto's and infertility. And so I really struggled with trying with my medication, changes in diet, changes in exercise. We tried gluten-free diet because there's supposedly a link between Hashimoto's and gluten. All of these things to try to not only make me feel better, because it was a really hard 5-6 years just having the disease, but also trying to get pregnant while having a disease. These unsuccessful IUIs and all of this now 2 years of trying for a baby, where we had no trouble getting pregnant before and even pregnant on an IUD. It was getting to the point where they basically were saying you have unexplained secondary infertility. They just really didn't know why. Nothing seemed to really be exactly a determining factor. When they said I had indicators of PCOS, it wasn't exactly PCOS. They couldn't necessarily 100% pinpoint it to Hashimoto's, because women were conceiving on Hashimoto's clinically. So it was a real struggle to figure out, what our issues were and how we proceeded from there. Our next option recommended to us was to go on to IVF. And again, without fertility coverage, in the Midwest at the clinic that we were going to see, I believe at the time their least expensive cycle was for one cycle of IVF, and it was around $14,000, not including medication. And when you're in your mid to late 20s, you have a 4-year-old, 4-year-old, money's not just abundantly flowing, and it was a really, at the time, not a smart financial decision for us to make, especially when we had been in some financial situations prior. Actually, at the time, we were really nervous about how we felt about IVF and creating life scientifically and what that all looked like. And for a while, we were actually saying, okay, God blessed us with one child. If it's meant to be that we're parents of only one, then that's how it'll be. But we didn't feel like it was right to proceed to IVF at the time. We kept trying, but it wasn't really like, we were really monitoring it and really going to the clinic the way that we had been in the past. So in 2014, January, we did get moved again across country to the Northeast. And as soon as we got here, I felt an overwhelming desire to really pursue the infertility again, to see if anything had changed. Was I ovulating on my own again? Is there anything that could that they could do for us, maybe that we hadn't done before. Maybe we could do a medicated IUI first before proceeding to IVF. So we met with a doctor here locally. In February of 2014, he had recommended that I do a laparoscopy and a hysteroscopy just to see if there was endometriosis like the very first OBGYN had said to me, or if there was any kind of damage. And I was really excited because nobody had really ever suggested that to us before. So we had that done in February, and really, he said my uterus was beautiful. I had a C-section for my first baby, and he said he could hardly see any scarring from that. That really, anatomically, nothing would suggest why I couldn't carry another baby. He also did another semen analysis on Josh at the time. And again, I don't remember the numbers, but I remember him coming back and basically saying again that they were within normal range. So looking back on all of this, my thought was that the infertility was related to me. And it was a really hard thing to digest because I had a lot of guilt for feeling the way I felt about the baby that we miscarried. I had a lot of guilt because I had this autoimmune disease that we were having a hard time controlling, and I felt like not being able to control it was leading to us not being able to conceive. I had a lot of guilt that I wasn't giving my husband another child. I wasn't giving our family another child. And so it was really a hard time for me to figure things out. Again, his suggestion at that time, he said that we could do a medicated IUI, but he really suggested that we do IVF. However, both my husband and I just didn't really have this feeling like he was the doctor for us. I don't know why, I can't really pinpoint it. I just felt like he was so quick to push us in a certain direction that we still weren't quite ready to accept. Leads us up to December of 2015, so about a year and a half later. Again, it was just, I think this time around, we were in a better place financially after a few years. We also felt like we were also getting older. I was now about to turn 33 and my husband 37. And so it sort of started to scare me that we were going to be old parents. I know that sounds crazy to most of you who are probably still going through IVF or infertility and trying, but when you've had a child at 24 and now he's approaching nine years old at the time, it was just a combination of, you know, is this ever going to happen? We're not going to have this baby until we're 40. Maybe we should just really put aside our fears financially, our fears of whether or not this would work, and just trust God and go for it. And it was really my husband who pushed me to do this. He said, Katie, it's just money. We just need to try it. That way you'll know that you have tried everything that you could to have another baby. So we did pursue a third doctor in Massachusetts and started again from ground zero, other than the fact that we had this kind of long history that I've just gone over with you, that we had gone over with the new doctor. And again, she wanted to do another semen analysis on Josh. We did a little bit of blood work on me, but not to the degree I had done before. And surprisingly, Josh's semen analysis didn't come back as well this time. And his numbers were good, his morphology was good, but his motility was very low. It was around 8% or 5%, I'm sorry. And it was a huge shock when she called to tell us that, because both the other semen analysis, granted one had been 3 years prior, one had been 2 years prior, were, quote, within normal range. And She said that she would like to repeat the semen analysis 3 weeks later just to make sure it wasn't some fluke of numbers, or something could have impacted him at that day or the days before. So we repeated it 3 weeks later in February of 2016. And again, his numbers were great in terms of volume and morphology, but motility was still low. This time it was at 8%. And I remember her explaining to us that clinically for them, if it's anywhere between like 10 to 20%, they would recommend an IUI, but if anything was less than 10%, they would recommend IVF. And I don't know why, but it was really like the first time I felt like, okay, even with all these things that had happened to me over the years, this could really be exactly why we weren't conceiving, if it's simply because of his motility. I mean, if his numbers were great otherwise, maybe his little sperm just weren't reaching my egg even when I was ovulating. And while I certainly don't want to discredit any of the situations that I had impact our fertility, it really sort of opened my eyes. I don't know why. And for the first time I felt like, okay, if we did IVF and we did ICSI, which is where they actually inject the sperm into the egg, especially they do this in situations where you have a male factor infertility, such as low motility, that we would have a real great shot at getting pregnant. And even up to this date, still have a hard time regulating my thyroid numbers, but she didn't seem concerned about that. She also said that my numbers really did not indicate PCOS, that we were for years trying to get my levels under control, or within some type of normal range to be able to conceive. She really thought that in the grand scheme of things, that it was the motility that was causing the issue. And in fact, she had even requested the semen analysis that we did when we first moved here, or Josh did. And those numbers, while they weren't as low as 8 and 5%, they were still low, around 15. And even at that time, had we known that, I think we would have had a clearer picture of our infertility. So at that point, it was a very clear decision for us that we needed to do IVF. And again, there's no guarantee with IVF, but it was enough information for me to proceed and say, if it works, we knew exactly why we were struggling. And if it didn't work, it didn't work, and it wasn't meant to be. And so in March of 2016, we did to start the IVF process, and you guys are welcome to go back if you're new subscribers and check out the videos from our whole IVF process up until today, where I'm exactly 22 and a half weeks pregnant. And it worked for us. It's exactly the outcome we had hoped for. I know it doesn't work for everyone, but really this video is just to showcase some of the things that we went through specifically to get to this point. That those of you who are dealing with Hashimoto's and who have done a lot of research about how it is linked to infertility, that there are some things that you can try, such as changing your diet, especially trying a gluten-free diet to help regulate your menstruation. Those are there are some real links there medically between the two. I think the biggest thing that I wanted to point out is that even having visited with 2 OBGYNs and 3 different infertility doctors, that they all came up with different scenarios. And granted, we have a 5-year period of time that we were dealing with, and so things may change in the human body in 5 years. However, it was good for us to get those second opinions over the years and ultimately end up where we ended up, because I think she was able to see the big picture over 5 years and really pinpoint what she thought was the issue. And I really valued that. And so I guess I'm just encouraging you all who are going through infertility to be cautiously optimistic when you're meeting with fertility doctor, that you don't just necessarily go with exactly what they say is wrong. I mean, I had a guy, like I said, tell me I had PCOS, and so we went that path for, you know, a year and tried that. And then I had another guy, you know, basically say, oh, it's just unexplained, you just need to do IVF. And it just wasn't enough information for me to make that decision, to ultimately really looking at numbers and percentages with our last fertility doctor to really determine that for us it was a male factor infertility. And ultimately it was very easy for me to get pregnant via IVF because I had carried a baby before. So if you guys have any questions on this, I just felt passionate about sharing, you know, how secondary infertility can happen, that it's not always unexplained, that you can still have a baby. It can still happen. It happened for us. And so if you have any questions, I'm so happy to answer them. You can message below. You can private message me. You can also follow me on Instagram. It's kwhit, KWHIT 1015. I'll also link that below. I appreciate you guys listening to this long video. I hope it helps someone out there. And again, I hope you guys who are trying are successful. I've made such great friends on these videos, and I will be continuing to share our journey through pregnancy. Tomorrow I should be uploading our 21-22 week update. So I hope you all are doing well. I'm praying for you all. And I hope you all have a fantastic outcome to your journey. Take care. Bye.